Okay, let's start then. Good evening, everybody. You know, this is our third webinar on basically to address the abuse and violence issue within the South Asian community. So, why good men are silent? This is the campaign. So, this is our third webinar to basically it's kind of aligned with the women who are already working for their rights as a male, how we can support them, and why the good men, they keep silent when they witness, when they see this kind of things. So for this, basically, today's topic is on impact of self and partner and children. Basically, families. The whole family struggle when there is any kind of abusive relationship. They witness children, the impact of children. And the theme is for today's session is why the South Asian women tend to stay longer in abuse. So I will not speak much on this topic. Baldevji will give more elaboration or explain the topic. So the thing is basically domestic violence. When we see the violence and abuse, both are different things. So domestic violence is a significant public health problem that occurs among all throughout the world. We have to see the socio-economic, the financial factors, cultural aspects. So when we are seeing these aspects, so we have to see why the South Asian women, they stay longer in the abuse. So two things I forget, this is the housekeeping things. This session is a recorded session. If somebody is not comfortable, they can switch off their camera. And whenever you are not speaking, please mute yourself. So now I will ask Baldevji to give more your thoughts on this topic. So how we can proceed ahead with this campaign and how everybody can support this campaign.
Okay, I think there might be some people who are new to this webinar or maybe attending for the first time. And also to set some context for Dr. Tanya Das Gupta, who is our main speaker today. And she will be talking on the subject that Harinder, you have outlined, and sharing her experiences and what she, as a woman, as a professor, as a community activist in our South Asian community, what is her experiences, knowledge, perception around this topic. And after her initial remarks and her presentation, we all would have an opportunity to have a thorough debate and to learn how do we make some assessment of the situation, and what are some learnings that we will do, and how do we move forward. So that's the kind of thing that we will want to do. So we know that it's no secret violence against women exists in all cultures, all socioeconomic strata in every single country, including Canada. It's not a South Asian issue. It's everywhere. But because we are South Asians, we are much more concerned what happens within our community. And we are thoroughly discussing this topic from every single angle. We want to know why this happens, how this happens, what might be some of the peculiarities about the situation. And maybe there are some myths, whether these myths are cultural myths, religious myths, or some personal myths, or related to patriarchy, misogyny, toxic masculinity, whatever the issue may be. This is a safe forum for us to present our views and have some discussion. The end result is twofold. One, to increase our collective consciousness and our understanding, and two, we need to be able to create a space for our daughters and our granddaughters who are coming, that they have a better place for themselves. So I have two granddaughters. One is now 14 and 6. I wanted to make sure that they don't have to go through these kind of situations within their own lives. So we are creating a better place for our children and our grandchildren. So we have a collective responsibility as well. We may not have everything perfect today, but together we will come to some kind of a collective understanding at the end of this webinar. And so together we are creating a momentum within our community across Canada that we want everybody to be united to end this. Whether these are men, grandparents, youngsters, teenagers, it doesn't matter who they are. Violence against women is unacceptable. And then we who are working in this field, we need to be able to rise up to the occasion, and we need to kind of participate in this. So those are my kind of initial remarks, how we started, how we are moving forward. So slowly and slowly we are building a momentum. We will be uniting with like-minded people and other organizations who think like us, and collectively, hopefully, we will build a momentum in the coming near future. So without taking much more time, I want to introduce our keynote speaker today. So Dr. Tanya Das Gupta is a professor in the School of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies at York University. She is also currently the Affirmative Action, Equity and Inclusivity Officer at York. She has published widely on South Asian diaspora, race and racism, anti-racism, immigration and refugee issues, state policies, and women, work and families, and community activism. Prior to entering academia, her many years of community work with immigrant women and anti-racism resulted in the publication Learning from Our History, Community Development by Immigrant Women in Ontario, 1958 to 86. It was published in 1986, and she is the recipient of a number of awards for community services. So without much delay, please welcome Dr. Tanya Das Gupta to be our speaker for today's forum. Tanya ji.
Thank you so much, Baldev ji and Harinder ji, and also to PCHS for giving me this opportunity to talk on this very crucial issue which faces our communities. So I have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share screen. So just give me a minute.
Sorry, Tanya, before you start sharing your screen, Baldev, I suppose there is a video which we are supposed to play before her speech starts.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
हाँ, बस 2 मिनट.
They have come. जल्दी करो.
What will you say?
Happy birthday.
Sorry guys. Sohini will be out in 2 minutes. यार.
No problem यार, आज तो special day है. Let her take her time.
अबे कब स्पेशल डे नहीं होता है उसका? बैठो. देखो देखो कौन है? कविता आंटी, सुमित अंकल.
Hi.
Hi. Your best friend?
Hi.
चलो जाओ मान्या को अपनी गेम सिखाओ आदित्य. Go go go. Take her. Yeah.
Go.
अच्छा बताओ तुम दोनों लोग है क्या?
यार एक
कुछ भी नहीं, पहले हम सोहिनी से मिलेंगे.
लो, think of the devil and she's here.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, so good to see you.
Same here.
Happy birthday.
Beautiful, thank you.
Well, her choice.
Well, तुम भी इसी की choice हो ना?
बिल्कुल.
Guys, have a seat.
Yeah.
Let's
come.
sit. I love what you're wearing.
Thank you.
मम्मा लिपस्टिक
अरे मान्या,
अच्छा वो बाद में, पहले आप इधर आओ. क्या बोलेंगे हम आंटी से?
हाय हाउ आर यू
नहीं, हम क्या विश करेंगे?
हैप्पी बर्थडे आंटी
Yes.
thank you, beta. That's the best wish I've got all day. You've really taught her well, huh?
Excuse me. We taught her really well.
अच्छा.
You're damn funny.
पर honestly आजकल बच्चों को कुछ सिखाना कहाँ पड़ता है? They've become so smart.
सच में यार, तुम बच्चों की बात कर रही हो? ये मेरा आदित्य कल मुझे कहता है कि पापा मुझे iPhone 6 चाहिए.
Can you believe it?
Oh my God.
पता नहीं कौन इन्हें अक्ल देता है यार.
यार स्कूल्स आज की डेट में स्कूल में हर बच्चे के पास एक फोन होता है. इमेजिन 12th तक हम लोगों को ये भी नहीं पता था हाउ टू ऑपरेट अ फोन.
I totally agree with you on that.
Then that's tremendous pressure on parents. मतलब हम कब तक नजर रखेंगे अपने बच्चों पर?
But you know what I really feel is parents should actually have a healthy environment for their kid, you know. I mean, after all, उनके futures के ऊपर depend करता है, right?
सही बात
Yeah.
है.
You know, and sometimes it's just very disgusting if you go to a restaurant and बच्चे वहाँ पे मतलब इतना शोर मचा रहे हैं, इतनी चेंचे पेपे कर रहे होते हैं कि I don't know parents उनका ध्यान नहीं रखते हैं क्या? What is going on?
You know सुमित, यही पेरेंट्स फाइनली अपने बच्चों को पब्लिक स्पेसेस पर मारते हैं. And violence is not the answer, yeah. I think हम काफी सीरियस कॉन्वर्सेशन में जा रहे हैं.
Absolutely, man.
Would you like something to drink?
पापा आई एम गेटिंग मैरिड
ये सब क्या है?
मैं और मान्या शादी कर रहे हैं
आदित्य, अंदर जाके खेलो.
पापा देखो हम शादी कर रहे हैं
अरे बाबा तुम्हारी शादी हो जाएगी. अभी आदित्य अंदर जाकर खेलो.
नो नो अभी यू लाइक मी यस यू लाइक मी हाँ हाँ
और शादी के बाद क्या करोगे?
मैं पापा जैसे सुबह उठूंगा और रेडी होऊंगा
और फिर?
मान्या मुझे बैग देगी और मैं ऑफिस जाऊंगा ऑफिस में बहुत सारा पेपर साइन करूंगा और बहुत पैसा मिलेगा.
So cute, man.
And then?
फिर मैं घर आऊंगा.
अच्छा, फिर मान्या क्या करेगी?
बहुत कुछ.
और घर आके तुम क्या करोगे?
फिर मैं उसे मारूंगा. फिर मैं आराम से दरवाजा बंद करूंगा और सो जाऊंगा. नो नो सोने से पहले मैं खाना लाऊंगी और आप शो करके प्लेट फेंक देंगे. ओके.
These kids grow up believing it's okay to violate women. Look within. Women's safety begins at home.
Rinder, can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Myself, Manjinder, and I was really touched watching this video. Thank you so much for bringing this up at a core front where we all at least can, shake ourselves, look within ourselves, what is happening with, in our own families, and we considerably consider that, yes, it is all okay. And I would like to, address here, there's a beautiful Bollywood movie also that's called Thappad. So this video reminded me where the entire family, the entire friend circle, tries to tell the woman that that's okay. It was just one slap, but that one slap has shaken that woman so much that she could not come out of it. And we are being taught in such a manner that we need to accept what is happening. And it is something, I think being a mother myself, though I don't have a son right now, or probably if I'll have a son, it becomes mom's duty to teach their sons that how they should treat not only with their wives, but even with their mothers or any female for that matter, where they come across in their lives. And it becomes a moral duty on women as well, that we should raise voice something which goes, against you. which is something which hurts your self-respect and dignity. It's a both-way process. Thank you so much. It was something very powerful.
Thank you, Manjinder. Tanya ji, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I also wanted to comment on the short film. I found it to be very powerful, and I don't want to use the word shocking, but I think powerful is the right word. And we'll talk later on about what to do about this problem, because I think one of the reactions could be like just being stunned and not really knowing where to start, because it's such a complicated and complex problem. So I just want to show you let me get my PowerPoints, and then we'll really get into some of the issues, if that's okay, unless somebody else wants to comment on the film. Okay, so I'll just, can you see it all?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just see. Okay. So, the title of this program, or the series that you are having, is called "Why Are Good Men Silent?" And you can see that I put the word "good" in brackets. And the topic of tonight's talk is, why do South Asian women stay longer in abuse? And I put South Asian and longer in brackets. And the reason is that if we take out those words, the topic is still very relevant. Why are men silent? And why do women stay in abuse? But we want to also focus on why women seem to stay for a very long time, particularly South Asian women. And I'm not sure if there's any research which shows that South Asian women stay longer than other women. Nonetheless, I think that we can all agree that for a South Asian woman to leave her marriage and her family, things have to be really bad, before she decides to separate or move out or whatever it is. In fact, when I was had a discussion with a friend of mine who may be here actually in the group, I just was mentioning to her that I have to talk on this topic, and she said that she personally knew 2 women who have recently decided to separate from their husbands, but they are doing it after 35 or 36 years. And I wasn't sure whether there was abuse involved there, but it just shows that it does take a very long time for a South Asian woman to make that decision of leaving her marriage, even if there's abuse and extreme abuse. So I've kind of modified the question today a little bit. I want to talk about what makes it so difficult for South Asian women to leave an abusive marriage. And I'm a sociologist, so I'm going to be focusing on some of the social factors that also make it difficult. Most of the time when we talk about this subject, people tend to talk about the psychological and emotional reasons of why it is so difficult, which are, of course, extremely valid. But sometimes we tend to underplay the structural factors that make it difficult for us to leave, the family or the marriage. So, as I mentioned, I'll be talking about the social factors that make it difficult to leave. So, first of all, poverty and financial insecurity. When a woman, I'm trying to get at what are some of the things the woman thinks about before she can leave the family. So one of the first things she will be thinking about is, what will I eat if I leave this family situation, this marriage? How will I feed my children? How will I feed myself? And that's not an outlandish question for her to think about, because many single mothers, a big proportion of them, raise their children in poverty. compared to single fathers, let's say. So I have some statistics here to show that. So that is one of the big stumbling blocks, for women to actually decide to leave. Also, some other data here that 20% of immigrant women live in poverty, and women make 59% of minimum wage workers. So in other words, women, us as women, the location within society is vulnerable. There's the proportion of immigrant women who experience poverty tends to be high compared to men. And so that is one, big barrier to women, quickly kind of making the decision to leave. Related to that is homelessness. Okay, before I go to homelessness, I also wanted to mention social assistance payments. They are very low. So it's very difficult. In fact, I would argue that it is impossible to maintain yourself if you are deciding to leave your family situation, to support yourself and your child or children on the social assistance payments. So that is, another reason that the woman has to think about before leaving the household. So, and then connected with that, homelessness. Housing is extremely expensive, particularly in big cities, the GTA particularly, and also other cities that are similar. Where will I stay? So that is a big worry for a woman who has children again. And then we know that shelters, there's not enough spaces in shelters. In fact, 300 women and children are rejected from shelters each night. So there's not enough shelter available. Children, I think women are most mothers, particularly, are most concerned about the effect of moving out of the marriage. Even if it is an abusive marriage, we tend to think of what effect it's going to have on the children. And also another one is that losing custody of children. That is a big issue. Will I lose custody of my children? It's a big fear, so these are like different fears that women encounter and they have to deal with. Racism. So racism in the mainstream society in terms of dealing with the police, dealing with the courts, dealing with 911, all of these, kind of mainstream institutions, how they see us, South Asians. And Black women have talked about this quite openly, that they hesitate to contact the police because of the fear of being victimized, by another kind of violence, from the police. And also beyond the police, courts, how are the judges going to, the women have talked about being re-victimized, where they have to speak about their experiences again and again and again. And that's not easy. It's a re-victimization. And even after doing that, sometimes women are not believed. So this whole issue of racism, which also impacts on employment, on housing, all of those things are a very real barrier to women, leaving their homes. And this is a whole area. I'm just simply touching on some of the main issues that we can talk about. Mainstream society has various stereotypes about South Asian men, South Asian women. There are racial stereotypes that women are passive, and also stereotypes about the men, that they are violent, that they are, it's true that some of it could be true, not for all men, but for those who are abusive. But sometimes mainstream society generalizes, more, and moreover, what they do is they tend to see the violence as being cultural, rather than as a part of patriarchy, which is the male domination. So violence against, the inability to understand that the violence against women is not a cultural thing. It's coming out of the institution, which is male domination, of patriarchy. But then, of course, it takes up peculiar, as Baldevji was saying, that it takes up peculiar forms within the South Asian community, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. So that's racism. The immigration status, this is another thing. Should I call the police or not? There is a fear of deportation, particularly if your status in Canada is precarious. If you're a sponsored immigrant, maybe you're undocumented, maybe you're a refugee, maybe you're an international student, your status is temporary here in Canada. So if I call the police or contact the courts or a judge or a lawyer, will I be deported? So these are real fears that women have to kind of deal with before they can decide to leave the house. Up to, for about under Stephen Harper, there were 2 years when the government had brought in a regulation under which sponsored wife or sponsored spouse, let's say, had conditional residence in Canada, which meant that their stay in Canada was temporary. They had to prove that it was a valid marriage, a valid, family situation before the woman would get her permanent residency. Thankfully, that was removed. But in an abusive situation, most of the time, the woman is a sponsored immigrant. And so if she reports on abuse, and usually it's the husband who has sponsored her, or it could be the father, but a lot of times it's the husband, she could actually be deported. There is a fear of deportation. Now, I think that activists have been talking to courts and the police, so it doesn't happen that readily anymore. I hope it doesn't. But there is that fear that will I be deported because I'm a sponsored immigrant? My husband, who's the abuser, is sponsoring me into this country. So what effect is this going to have? So these are, some of the fears that women have to deal with. Deterioration of health. Living in a shelter or living in not so good housing has an impact on one's health. So that is, again, a consideration for women, and also the effect on the children's health. What is going to happen to their education? What will be the condition of their mental health? So the mental health costs. Research shows that children who live in shelters, they experience anxiety, depression, and also the mother, the woman who has been abused, she might be going through, post-traumatic stress. So all of these things become exacerbated in a shelter situation, or if the woman is, living with a friend or a relative, or quote unquote couch surfing, because of the insecurity and the lack of support. So the woman might think that, well, maybe, yes, I am being abused in the home, but if I leave this family situation, I'll be even more vulnerable. So she's in a situation where she has to weigh the costs and benefits of leaving. And what I'm trying to show is that there are many costs that she is concerned about. And that's not, those are not imaginary costs. They're real costs. So health and mental health, I would put in there. Other social factors, such as language barrier and limited education, for those women for whom language, they're not fluent in English, or maybe their education is limited, or maybe their education has been devalued. They may have degrees and so on, but they're not able to resume, the kind of careers that they may have had before, or that they have qualifications for. So that has implications for what kind of jobs they're going to get. Most of the time, the kinds of jobs they will get are also very precarious and insecure. And so with that money, they have to support themselves and the children. So these are real issues that she has to think about. And so for somebody for whom, whose English is not very fluent, they're not confident enough in that, or their education is not that great in the Canadian context, the options that they have in terms of jobs are very limited. And that also has implications for the kind of income, their security, and health, and all of those others. So it's kind of like a cyclical array of factors that would impact her. Cultural barriers with mainstream services. It's not a very attractive proposition often, for a woman to think of living in a shelter, which is I'm trying to think of the word that's used, where you live together with a lot of different people coming from many different cultural backgrounds with different practices, different religions, and so on. It can be scary. It can really put her off, the idea of moving out in terms of what kind of diet she's going to have, what kind of space she's going to have, what kind of parenting can she do with her children in a outside the family situation. I think the woman also thinks about depriving her children of the father. She is abused, yes, but she also thinks about what the child would lose in terms of her leaving the family situation. She might think that I'm depriving my child of the father's affection and the relationship with the father. So, and of course, going back to what I was talking about before, the shelters are spaces where parenting is disrupted, can be disrupted. I know that one of my students who did her work on homelessness and shelters, and she was herself in a shelter. She went there with her child, who was, I don't know exactly how old she was, but she was, let's say, a teenager. And so when she went to the shelter, she was separated from her teenager. They had to live separately. They were not allowed to live together. So there are those kinds of situations that are counter to a woman, feeling comfortable to get into a shelter situation. The family structure. So here we have some of the peculiarities of the South Asian family structure. Many of the South Asian families that we have in diaspora are multi-generational, where we have the parents, of course, but the grandparents or in-laws are there. And sometimes other people, nieces, nephews, anybody who migrates, because there's chain migration, they come to Canada and they start living with the families that are settled here. And so that creates a different situation. I can think of examples that I know of abuse in South Asian families, where the abuse is being perpetrated not only by the partner, by the spouse, but also by the in-laws. So that makes it particularly painful, shall I say, and also very difficult to get out of that kind of situation, because the woman, I'm assuming here, the woman is being, if she's in an abusive situation, and if the in-laws are also kind of goading, the husband on in terms of this kind of behavior, then she's outnumbered. So it's not even a situation of the husband-wife, one against the one. It becomes one against 3 or 4. I'm sure we all know of those kinds of examples. And there's also the issue of dowry. Dowry is very significant in many South Asian contexts. I'm not saying it's true of every context, but it is true of many contexts. And in fact, there are many cases where dowry did not exist before, but now it does. So it seems to be coming back also in many situations. In fact, in my experience, I think sometimes it's a source of money and resources for the family. And so, and that is again, implicated in terms of how the woman gets abused for supposedly not bringing enough dowry and, all of these kinds of issues. So I think the whole dowry, the family structure, that is a whole complex, that we need to think about. The community, the marginalization and ostracization by one's community. So the stigmatization that the woman faces from the community, she is the one who left, even though the marriage fell apart and the husband and the wife was being abused, but the community often sees her as the perpetrator and the person who quote unquote broke up the family. She left, she was bad. And that's not uncommon. I've heard even in my close networks, if a family falls apart, even if there's no abuse, the fault is put on the woman, as if there was something wrong with her, that she couldn't do something, she was somehow deficient. She will also lose her friends and support network. Either she will lose her friends and support network, or she might fear that this might happen, because if she's thinking of leaving an abusive situation, she doesn't know which of her friends will support her and which of her friends will support, her abuser. So there's that also. And I think one thing South Asian women are not, I'm generalizing here, but South Asian women, I think more than non-South Asian women, are very collectively identified, like they see themselves within a collective. So this whole idea of being alone is quite strange and also, I would say, somewhat scary for women to think that, okay, I'm moving out on my own, I'll be there just with my child, and I don't have any connections with, perhaps I don't have any relatives of my own, and of my friends circle, I don't know which of my friends will support me. So there's this feeling of being alone, of being isolated. And I think this is where perhaps we as community members could think of support networks, support systems that we could perhaps visualize and construct, which would make it easier for the woman to walk out, of her family. I'm sure each of these points, I'm hoping that you'll pick up on some of these and can talk about them even more. So I wanted to touch on COVID-19 catalysts, and there are documents and studies done by the Canadian government and also Statistics Canada on this, that the COVID-19, this pandemic, the environment of the pandemic has increased violence against women and family violence in general. And I think before we were starting this program tonight, you were talking about some cases in Alberta and so on, and I'm sure in Ontario as well. So this particular document that I'm referring to, I can give you the source if you're interested. They're talking about the catalysts within the COVID-19 situation. What are some of the factors which are causing more abuse, more violence, family violence? One is increased alcohol consumption. So we know that, we are all kind of, locked down in our homes. Somebody said we are all under house arrest, which is literally, it feels like that. So one of the things that's happening is people are drinking more. Now, I don't subscribe to this theory that drinking causes the abuse, but I think it's a catalyst. It could be a catalyst. So if people are drinking more, getting drunk, then, the frustrations come out, and that's a lot of times that's when abuse happens. Another reason is that we have received a message from mainstream services that we shouldn't burden the emergency and health services. So we don't call as readily, the emergency services, because we think, who wants to go into a hospital, which is full of COVID patients, and, there may be infections and things like that. And also the services are overburdened. So we shouldn't call them unless it's a real emergency situation. Staying home and social distancing. So we are more isolated. We are staying at home. There's not much scope to go outside the home, to go to a community center or to go to a temple or gurudwara or visit friends and things like that. So we are more or less staying at home, and we are social distancing. We're not even talking that much with neighbors or friends. So this is exacerbating the situation with the abuse. Some shrinking of mainstream services, like there are less support systems in terms of courts, lawyers, police, volunteers, even nonprofit organizations. They are also working from home. They themselves are also socially isolated. Some may be infected by COVID, so they may be isolating themselves or lacking the resources. Many people have become laid off during this time. So there's less kind of there's less of a sense that there are services out there or support services that we can access. Lack of privacy at home, childcare increased with homeschooling. So I'm just gonna move the, okay, let me see. Oh, I couldn't do that. Okay, part of my writing here is being covered. But so people are at home. So some of the services are being offered by through online or by phone, let's say, so long distance, remote work. But what if you don't have the privacy at home to talk about abuse? It would be very difficult to talk to somebody outside, even your friend, family member, or let alone, community, community worker or a shelter worker, that I'm being abused at home. So there's lack of privacy, or I might just not have Wi-Fi. I may not have access to that, or I may not know how to use it. There's more childcare demand at home because children are at home too. There's childcare services are closed, and schools are often closed. They're up and down. Sometimes they're open, sometimes they're closed. So there's more pressure inside the house, particularly for the mother, because there's more caregiving involved. Not to speak of a situation where if there is COVID going on in the house, then there's even more, caregiving labor that's required inside the house. I also wanted to mention that right now I'm doing a piece of research in the Punjabi community and COVID-19. We are trying to see how this pandemic has affected settlement workers who are working with migrants in the Punjabi community. And we are also looking to interview people. And we also want to interview newcomer migrants who are coming in at this time or came in, let's say, less than 5 years in Canada. We want to find out from them what it's like to, look for a job and look to settle in Canada within this context. And also some of them, again, are affected by violence in the home, perhaps, and are also affected by housing and a lot of these issues that I've already mentioned. So I wanted to throw that in case any of you are in that, would like to give us an interview, please contact us. And I'm working in collaboration with Punjabi Community Health Services. So going back to what makes it difficult to leave, the slide here is talking about what makes it difficult is what we learn from childhood. So the whole socialization process, just like the little children in the video, they were learning through their observation of their parents. The little boy said, oh, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to come home and then, I'm going to do this. And the little girl said, I'm going to make food for you. And then, of course, they're also learning how, about violence. If they are seeing it in the house, then that's also what they are learning. So the whole socialization process, how we learn how to be women and how to be men, so gender, in other words, what are the definitions of a good woman, a good man? All of these things are learned behavior, and we learn it from the time that we are babies, children. So here are some, let me see if I can move this. Yeah, okay. Excuse me. So I've just put a few things here, like prescribed goals for, particularly for a man, for a woman, is to be married and to have a family, and of course also to have children. And of course, a heterosexual marriage. So that is, it goes without saying. So particularly for a woman. So if a woman is not married, does not have, or maybe married but does not have children, or does not live in a family situation, she's seen as a deviant. She's seen as somebody who is not quite part of normal, society. So these are some of the things, ideas that we learn, and they become obstructions to us moving out when we see abuse happening. Religion. Through religion, no matter what religion we believe in or we are brought up in, we are taught that marriage is for life. Even in Christian religion, marriage is for life. Or in our South Asian religions, often it was my fate. If I'm being abused, if I have a bad marriage, it was my fate. I must have done something in my before life, therefore I'm going through this punishment now. So this kind of thing. Cultural ideas, pativrata. I don't know if you what the Punjabi word for that might be, but it's basically the worshipping of one's husband. It's very deep in all the South Asian cultures, I would say, and the obeying of the husband and also elders. And I think part of patriarchy also is this notion of deferring to elders. Because a lot of times, I was talking about the peculiarities of the multi-generational South Asian families. Excuse me, the abuse is sometimes the source of it are the elderly in-laws. And in situations where the man may not be that bad, but sometimes it's the in-laws, the parents of the man who kind of pushes them to behave in an aggressive and whatever way. And I think that is also part of patriarchy, this deferring to older, elders. There's a good part of it too, because we look after our elders, we care for them, and so on. But there's also a bad part of it, because if the elders are not generous and compassionate people, they're not wise people, then they can also pressure their kids to do wrong things. So these cultural ideas of obeying the husband, and the woman has to be passive and obey the men in the family. She has to obey the elders, and look after them, and so on. And of course, all of these ideas are part of patriarchy. They're part of male domination within society. I had talked earlier about the collective identity, that the woman's identity is often through her husband or son. When we go to a social function, women often have this experience of being asked, what does your husband do? You may be a career person. The woman may have a very bright career, may have education and be doing really exciting things, but often the community is interested in knowing, how many children you have and what your husband does. So there's, and the woman, so what I'm trying to get at is that the woman's identity is through the husband and what the husband is achieving. And sometimes what the children are achieving. It's also through the children. So her identity, so that's why, so when a woman is thinking, contemplating, perhaps leaving an abusive situation, she's also losing her identity. She's losing her sense of being a part of a collective unit. So that is also very difficult for her, because she becomes lost. She could be lost, and she has to develop her identity again, all over again. And then these are also parts of patriarchy, that the husband, father, and the brother are the protectors. So patriarchy also puts pressure on the men to behave in a particular way. You know, he has to be the breadwinner. He has to be, you know, the protector. He has to be strong. And so some people talk about, what is it called? I'm forgetting it. The young people, toxic masculinity, it's called. So toxic masculinity is not only bad for women, it's also bad for men. And of course, bad for children and bad for society, I would say. And of course, part of this socialization is that above all else, women have to be caregivers. They have to protect the children and protect the elderly and, you know, protect her husband and everybody except herself. So she has to put, you know, everybody's interest before her own interest. So leaving the house sort of militates against all of these ideas. And that's difficult. So gender, I've already touched on gender, but just a little bit more. Gender is basically socially constructed ideas of what a good woman is and what a good man is. You know, so definitions of masculinity and femininity. And so in diaspora, like in Canada, we are caught between two different types of definitions. We have the definition of mainstream Canada, and then we also have the definitions within our own culture. And sometimes they're congruent, like they're the same, but often they are contradictory. So women are also kind of trying to manage and negotiate all these different types of definitions that they're in the middle of. And young people are really affected by this, like teenagers and, you know, young children who are growing up given these different sorts of ideas that are bombarded by. So in any case, we learn these definitions of masculinity and femininity. It's learned from childhood, as I mentioned. And these are just ideas. Men are leaders, women are followers, men are dominant, women are to be dominated, men are strong, women are weak, men are breadwinners, women are caregivers, men control, women are controlled, men are strong, women are weak. So when we read it like this, it may seem funny, you know, and you may say that, oh, who believes in these things anymore? But you'll be surprised to see how sort of entrenched they are in our heads. And so we often play these roles out. And of course, it's a binary. So you're one or the other. Let's say if you are a man who is very generous and compassionate, or if you're a woman who's strong and aggressive, then you are seen as being weird. You know, something is wrong with you. So it's a binary. You have to be one or the other. You can't be a combination of different things. And that is part of gender and part of patriarchy. So I don't know how I'm doing with my time, but I've sort of come to the end of my PowerPoints. What I wanted to say is that things are changing. So it's not all bleak. I think the fact that we are having this discussion itself is a step in the right direction. So I wanted to commend PCHS for doing that. There's a little, what I wanted to also mention is that, is that men are speaking, of course, women are talking about violence against themselves and abuse and all of these things, harassment, sexual harassment, Me Too movement. You know, there's lots happening with women, but also men. I think men are also speaking out against violence. against women. And when I was thinking about this presentation, I found this resource. I was looking for men who may be speaking out against violence. And I found this thing, which I want to show you. I hope that I can show it. Let me see if this is from India, so it's a little bit, centered on India. So this is India's feminist men who deserve a shout out too. Some of you may have seen this. So these are all kind of well-known men. You could say they're celebrities who have spoken out. They have used social media and they have spoken out against violence against women, against sexual harassment, and so on. So I just wanted to show you some of this. Farhan Akhtar, you may know of some of these people. He's a filmmaker, actor, and musician, and humanitarian person. So he has spoken out. Raj Nayak, who is a former COO, whatever that is. And he has also taken a lot of very big steps in terms of talking about women. Here's some other, Adil Hussain, who is an actor, I believe. And he has also, spoken out. There are some blurbs here about things that they have tweeted on social media. Let me see. And then this one, I think many of you may know him. He's a cricketer. Some say he's the world's best cricketer right now, Suresh Raina. And here is a little video I wanted to end with. So can you see it, by the way?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay.
Protecting a woman or a girl means respecting her, protecting her right not to be aborted just because she's a girl.
Protecting a woman means respecting her, protecting her choice to wear, to be, to earn, to dream whatever she wants.
Protecting a woman means respecting her, like we do to our mom, sister, and our girlfriend.
Protecting her physical, sexual, economic, and social rights.
To be cherished as the princess of her father's heart, to be valued for everything her life brings to this world.
Protecting her opportunity to be and do anything that her determination, ability, and dreams will let her do.
To be loved for the light of a smile. To be encouraged to work hard and follow her dreams.
Make sure she can do whatever she wants in her life. We just need to support her always.
To become a strong, capable, and a wonderful woman, just like her mother. And to choose when she is ready to find the king of her heart. Protect means respecting her value.
Protect means respecting her independence.
I will respect to protect. I will respect to protect.
I will respect to protect. I will respect to protect.
I will respect to protect.
So I think I'll leave it there. I mean, I think that we can have a big discussion on the video itself and what it says. But I thought it's interesting that to see that, these kinds of things are happening and there are resources like this that we can look at. So thank you very much. And actually, the last thing that I wanted to say is that I wanted to sort of leave you with this question, that given all of these factors, which are huge factors, what can we do as a community to deal with this issue? What kind of strategies can we think of? Perhaps, we have to think of strategies at different levels. We have to think of what kind of support we can give. We can think of what kind of structures we need to, maybe new structures that we need to establish. Maybe we need to think of a shelter system, maybe safe houses. I don't know. But so we have to think of at this question at many different levels. So, so hopefully in the discussion, we can come up with strategies. So I'll stop screen sharing now so that we can all see each other. Stop share, I think. Yeah. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tanya ji. Thank you. So there are some excellent points for discussion. One of the ones that I'm just, and there are some excellent points in the chat as well. One is around creating social networks for her. How do we do it? And the second one, I found something that you talked about losing her identity. So the question for me is, how do we create an opportunity for her to not lose her identity, but she has immediate support where she just transfers her identity, so there is no loss. I think it's that fear of loss may be preventing her from leaving. If that is so, then as service providers, as concerned citizens, how do we create that support where she doesn't lose her identity? So those were the 2 points that I think we need to have more discussion, but that's just me. But I want to definitely give other people the opportunity. But for me, how do we create social networks so she feels welcomed, she is able to leave and yet survive? And second one, how do we create opportunities so she doesn't lose her identity, but she is immediately welcomed, she has that social support so that she can not feel that, oh my God, I'm going to lose everyone. And then how would I even survive? I don't know how, because all my life I had somebody with me all the time. So those were some of the things. I want to open the floor. Thank you, Tanya ji, for the excellent presentation. And I want people to share their views, your suggestions. And we are recording it, but I'm also documenting it. But our end goal is to learn from it today, from collective wisdom, put it together in some form that we can make a change for the better. Okay. So those were my comments, and I want to open it for discussion.
Yes, Amandeep ji, you want to say something?
Tanya ji,
yes.
I have a question about the 300 women and children are rejected from shelters every night. And I do understand lack of resources, shortage of resources. Do you have any knowledge or any more information in this area? When they left the abusive situation, now they are out and searching for a shelter, but they are rejected. Where do they turn to?
I should thank you for that question. Should I just go ahead and answer questions as they come?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should clarify about that statistic. It's really dealing with women across the board. So it's not just South Asian women. It's all women. And also this statistic deals with not just abuse situations, but it's homeless women. And homelessness, as you know, is caused by many different factors. It could be like because you're laid off or the income has stopped and things like that. So that's a really good question, because what the research shows is that homelessness for women is different from homelessness for men in many respects. But one of them, as I understand it, is that women end up going to their friends or maybe a relative that is somewhat supportive of their situation, and then couch surfing, that is staying in their house, staying in the basement, or somewhere. And so that is also very difficult if you have a child with you. So then it's a very good question. I don't know what options they have. And I think that maybe one of the reasons why they don't leave the abusive situation, because they may be thinking, at least I have a shelter over my head, and my child has a shelter over my head. But that's a really good question. I don't know if anybody else wants to take that up. You may have the information.
No, this is good information, and actually this is a biggest fear of leaving. If the help you are turning to and that help is not there, and that's a big question for the organizers, for the policymakers. Like, if our research shows that for X number of reasons people go to shelter, not only the abusive situation, and they don't have a place, 300 every night, even though it's national stats, it's a big number.
Yes.
So that it is. These are national stats?
I believe so. I can sort of check it and send it to you.
Yeah, no problem, Tanya.
Yeah.
But this is very good information that you have shared with all of us. We know most of it, but bringing it to the level of understanding that you shared with us is very helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time and being among us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm struggling with a different question altogether. I'm just struggling with this thought. To what extent, so I know that there are limitations to services, whether these are shelter, women abuse organizations, and all that other stuff. My question is, to what extent do South Asian women feel reluctant to leave the abusive situation because of that they will be on their own? And so either they don't have the skills, or the society will be too harsh on them, or they will lose every kind of a social network that they have. To what extent, plus what can we do to those women who are making a decision to stay for whatever reason they are willing to stay? And that is, I think that is a challenge for us. How do we work with those women who cannot leave, do not want to leave, because they will lose every single support, every single connection? Their whole identity will be lost. So they're so afraid that leaving doesn't even come into their mind. That is a challenge. I mean, how do I create a social network for women? How? What can we do?
May I try to answer a little?
Yeah, please.
I think if we just look into it, then there is one very important thing which Tanya also mentioned, that there are some clear differences, developmental differences between how girls and boys are brought up in the society. Every woman is supposed to be the sacrificing person, and the man is supposed to be the masculine image in the society. So when a new person or a new human being comes in, they have a thought of adjusting to these two bifurcations, either become the perfect male or become the perfect female. Definitely for some time, when they have their innate things in them, there are things which are impelling and propelling them to go into the direction in which their own mind is taking them to. But certainly this gradual learning from the society, this gradual learning from their own self, because then they tend to defy the own inner voice of their own self to be a revolutionary or be a rebel to discard these stereotypes. So every person at some point of time does not listen to that healthy resistance which is coming from their own inside. So they just tend to totally snub that healthy resistance which is coming to their actual rescue. But then with deep down conditioning of the society, those stereotyping, telling women to be sacrificing and telling men to be not to cry for small things. So these things lay a very, very big impression in everybody's minds. And then everybody try to fit into either the one part or the second part. So this is the thing that while leaving and defying, because leaving certainly is defined. So that's why these things do not even pop up in their mind. And even if they pop up, they would just snub them there, right there, because it is not fitting into that consonance of the consonant social order which has been prevailing so far. Maybe that's a very theoretical answer to it, but this is what I feel, because there is this psyche is playing a huge role. Expectations from a woman, I'm not saying that there are no expectations from a man, there are expectations, but those are totally in contrast to the woman. So this is one thing. And then one more thing, like if we just look into all this, we often link with feminism is often railing into women empowerment. I think I clearly, like if I recall it, late 19th century feminism was the first wave of feminism came into late 19th century. Till then, we have been discussing how to empower women, how to bring the equity, how to stop the abuse, violence against women. So, Tanya, my question to you arising from all this would be, are these efforts, these education and these awareness, like they are so reductive to this myriads of these injustices but which are happening in the contemporary society? Are they too reductive to it, or like what's happening here? What's the gap? It's been more than a century now.
Well, I would say that all these movements have had an impact, but then there are also counter movements. You know, something happens, for instance, something like COVID happens, you know, who planned for this? It happened. And because of the situation, because of this development, now we have a situation where there's an epidemic of violence within families. So I think that these movements play a big role. Like if we look at movements like Black Lives Matter, for instance, you know, I think that it has had a huge, because I do equity work within York University. It's a small example, but we've spent decades, you know, talking about how it's important to make diverse hirings in the university and things like that. Nothing happened. Yeah. But then as soon as the Black Lives Matter movement started happening, now there's some change happening in the university. Like they are forced because of those protests that are going on, you know, and there are other examples of protests that are happening in our societies too, like all the protests, like the farmers' protests, for instance. I mean, I do believe in collective action, and the collective action has an impact, but then we also have to work on education, I think. You know, education is I saw in the chat, Rana, who is a friend of mine, actually, she's joined. Thanks for joining, Rana. She's talked about peer groups that may be helpful. So that women's leadership programs, which give women a network and help regain confidence. So I think that it is possible, you know, for women to kind of unlearn what they have learned, or even for men to unlearn what they have learned. I'm hopeful. I'm you know, an optimist, even though the situation is so bad. But I know what you mean, Puneet. It's very discouraging when you see, despite all the work that has gone on, there's still, you know, violence, because we still have a patriarchal society. You know, and to get rid of patriarchy, it's like saying, you know, how do we get rid of racism? I think that we have to work towards that, but it's going to take, you know, a long time to really make a dent in it.
Yeah, and I think it's not only the social paradigm of patriarchy, it's arising from all sorts of directions. This has been a political patriarchy, economic patriarchy, financial patriarchy, even, you know, like employment patriarchy. So this has been surviving, and yeah, it is very difficult. But what's more concerning is that these moments, they come in with a greater force, but then they have their counterparts who oppose them, and then they just die flickering around in some moment, and then another wave comes in, third wave comes in, fourth wave, and some other moment like, but still after so many years we are here discussing abuse, physical hurt. I mean, this should not have been existing. This should have at least been eradicated, like let alone these financial equities, let alone these emotional abuse and other things. Okay, these could be, after a years, these could be surviving on the plate of this discussion. But if we just look at the physical abuse, it's imagine the depth of this graveness of this thing, this abuse and this injustice, that it's still on the plate with the worst form, physical abuse, a man hitting a woman, it still exists. This is what fascinates.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, about 40 years, I think 40 years back, I was involved in establishing a women's group in Toronto called the South Asian Women's Group. It's now called South Asian Women's Center.
Mm-hmm.
And the immediate reason for establishing that was violence against women. There were some cases in Toronto where the woman committed suicide because of the abuse. And I think there was, she jumped off a bridge or something like that. And there was another case, there were like 2 or 3 cases. And so that was like the catalyst for starting the South Asian Women's Group. And going, just agreeing with you that those issues are still here, despite all the work that we have done. So that's why I think it's like a spiral. We go forward, then we also go backwards, but we have to go forward.
Yeah. Just a last comment, and then I'll let other people to have their chance. And I think now this moment, why are good men silent, or how you say it, why are men silent, bringing both the genders to fight to combat one evil. I think when we leave out one gender on the trail of empowering the other one, so it makes it incomplete. So I think this has been a good approach, bringing men join the platoon. I'll not take more time. Yeah. So you can go ahead with other questions. I think Manjinder has her hand raised. Manjinder, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Harinder, you want to say something? Sorry.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
so sorry.
So I will definitely talk about the effort we are making and also patriarchal structure. Manjinder.
Thank you, Harinder. Yes, I completely second what Tanya just said, that I'm also an optimist person. And I honestly feel that I'm also coming from a sociology background, being a sociology graduate myself. I can understand the change which is at a structural level. Another thing, I really want to comment here is something called cultural gap. Tanya ji, you must be familiar with this term, but I just want to, tell something that the technology advancement is like, it comes with a zoom, it comes with a boom. But when we talk about the structural changes, they are very slow in their pace. It takes decades and centuries to bring that change within the structure. That's why, nowadays we are using the best of the technology. Let's say we are even finding out ways, let's say Zoom, to connect with people. That's technological advancement. But just think about the topic that we are discussing, domestic violence, which has been discussed even a century back. So this is something which is called as cultural lag. And but I want to address this thing that yes, the change does happen with the collective consciousness, with the collective efforts of the society being put forward. And I want to give a very small example that there was a time when a woman used to give a birth to a child, and while admitting to the school, mother's name was not even being mentioned, neither on the birth certificate nor on the school's admission form. Like, just think about it, that mother who is giving a birth, keeping the child in the womb for 9 months, he has an association with the child more than the father for good 9 months, but she's not being given even the identity for it, that it's your child. But yes, the change has come. Now on the birth certificates, you will see the mother's name at least at the top of the father's name. And yes, you can admit your child even even if you are a single mom, nobody will even ask you for the father's name if you're not willing for that. So changes do happen, but it takes time and it takes a lot of conscious and collective efforts. And I think, I would relate to Baldev Uncle's question here, that what we can do as a peer support. I also pointed out that we can create some peer support groups, because this deals with, pushing some women forward, because there is always a fear of rejection from the society, even rejection from their own parents and families for that matter. Yeah. That my own parents are not going to support me if I'll take that step. But out of 10 or out of 100, I would say there would be 2 women who might have taken that step. So finding those 2 women who will act as a catalyst, who will act as a reinforcing agent to those 98, or from those 98, probably, we can expect that 5 will come forward listening to those 2, or, holding the hands of those 2. So yes, it's a very difficult task, but yes, it is not even impossible. So where we can create some groups like that, where we can empower the woman that, yes, see, this, somebody has done the same, so you can also do it if she has done it. So educating women around it, empowering more about, or playing with their, psychological loss, or just doing some counseling around that piece, that you are not losing your own identity. You are identity within your own self, not being a mother, not being a wife of so and so person. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Manjinder. Baldev.
So Manjinder raised a point around cultural lag. I'm not too knowledgeable about this, but partly it got me thinking. For last 5,000 years in India, we have not been able to get rid of certain evils like the caste system, dowry, bride burning, killing of girls, untouchability, extreme poverty, Dalit issue, all these issues. Is it cultural lag, or is it sheer control of the upper classes, that they have created a system whereby they cannot get rid of poverty, because then their middle class will be eroded? Who will come and wash their pots and pans, and who will mop the floor, and who will wash the dishes and stuff, and who will be the nannies to their children? I think I don't know too much about cultural lag, but part of me thinks that there is a deliberate effort not to make a change. And they are not changing. I doubt it whether a decent person, a rational person will say, I will accept dowry. I like to kill my daughter. I don't like daughters. I don't think so. But somehow there is an opportunity that is created for us to accept these evil, and they are accepted in India. Recently, I was just thinking, and I think I talked to Puneet, what is the character of a nation? And I'm just asking myself, what is the character of a South Asian community in Canada? What is our character? That we can badmouth international students, we can kill our women, we can abort our girls, we internalize racism. Is that because cultural lag, or is there some inherent stupidity that we are involved with? And we are, for some reason, for saving face, we are not getting rid of these stupid superstitions and rituals. I don't know how to answer it, Tanya, but I get frustrated that somehow one day, maybe in another 10,000 years, we will come to this rationalization, hey, beating up women is a bad idea. And so I don't know, I'm just running out of time. And I want to do this before I die, guys. I'm 70 years old. You guys need to help me.
I think one of the things that we have now is social media. which we didn't have before. So I think that maybe we can use social media in such a way to start these conversations, and we can use TV shows, radio, wherever, because I think that when we talk about certain things, it becomes normalized. Right now, there's a stigma against it, so nobody is talking about this issue. You know, I haven't seen too many, but I'm not a person who is dealing with violence against women on a regular basis. But I don't see a big discussion around it, socially speaking. It's still very stigmatized, very hidden. But you're right. I mean, every time I get one of those alarms on my cell phone, I kind of think, I hope it's not a South Asian man, who is after a woman or has kidnapped a child, and that kind of thing is not good. You know, it shows that we have so much work to do. But I think that we should think of what can we do in this situation. And definitely, I think one of the things is to get this conversation going. We should have this conversation everywhere so that everyone thinks about it and also looks at alternatives. And of course, there are structural changes we have to make, but those are bigger changes that we need to think about. You know, for instance, making sure that there's employment available for a single woman who, is supporting a child or something like that. But I think one of the things we can do is to talk it up, like talk the topic up, so that it's not seen as an abnormal, very hush-hush kind of embarrassing topic that, we should be silent about.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tanya. You touched so many issues like culture, gender role, patriarchy, structure, attitude. And now I'm opening discussion for everybody. Anybody we can start discussion in Punjabi, Hindi, right? So, ਕਿਸੇ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਆ, ਸੁਝਾਅ ਆ, ਔਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਓਪਨ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਅੱਧਾ ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ। ਆਈ ਨੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਹਰਜੀਤ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਕੁਝ ਸੁਜੈਸ਼ਨ ਸੀਗੇ, ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਈ ਆ ਚੈਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਐਂਡ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਜੌਲ, ਸਤਪਾਲ ਜੌਲ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੁਝ ਸੁਜੈਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ? ਸੋ ਓਪਨ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਜੀ। ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਜਿਸ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਕੰਫਰਟੇਬਲ ਆ, ਹਿੰਦੀ, ਪੰਜਾਬੀ, ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼, ਆਪਾਂ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਓਪਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
हैंड रेज हो यार, सीमा वनकाला, हैंड रेज है।
हेनरी, यस।
थैंक यू अरिंदर जी। मेरा कहना है कि I deal with women against violence. I deal with that, and the cases unfortunately has been raising, not like decreasing at all. As much as social media is up, but there is nothing that the effect in a good way I can see. So as much as people, as previously has been talked, that people have been talking about it, but that the effect actually for that is nothing. Like we are in almost 2021, in the middle of 2021. So raising wise, social media is there. I don't know, it should be taught in schools, maybe more role plays, and from their in their school books, it should be something there. Because society, anything nowadays, especially I have been dealing with, especially I was very upset since morning that I had been dealing with students, South Asian students, and then got pregnant and delivered babies, and then left by their boyfriends or fiancés. So that's why I was I was away from the discussion, because I was dealing with certain crisis situations. That's very upsetting. So, it's decreasing, it's not decreasing, but social media is doing about it. So let's say if the child abortion is valid or not valid in India, but that's happening in here too. So I don't know how social media is helping in that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Simari. And Mr. Harjeet, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੁਝ ਸੁਝਾਅ ਸੀਗੇ? Are you here?
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ।
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ 'ਚ ਬੋਲਣ 'ਚ ਇੰਨਾ ਕੰਫਰਟੇਬਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਬਲਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਹੌਸਲਾ ਅਫਜ਼ਾਈ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਟਰਾਈ ਕਰਦਾ, ਸੋ ਹੈਲਪ ਮੀ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੁਝ ਸੁਜੈਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੇ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮਹੀਨੇ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਘੱਟ ਆ, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਲੰਬਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਪੈ ਜਾਂਦਾ। ਜੇ ਬਲਦੇਵ ਭਾਜੀ, ਪੁਨੀਤ ਜੀ ਜਾਂ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਭੈਣ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਕੋਈ ਪੋਡਕਾਸਟ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਵੰਸ ਵੀਕ ਹੀ ਹੋਵੇ, ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬਾਰ-ਬਾਰ ਸੁਣ ਸਕੀਏ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਤੇ ਇਹ ਮੇਰਾ ਇੱਕ ਸੁਜੈਸ਼ਨ ਸੀ। ਦੂਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੀ ਨਾ ਰਿਕਾਰਡਿੰਗ ਆਉਣ ਨੂੰ, ਚਾਹੇ PCHS ਦੇ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਪੇਜ ਤੇ ਆ ਜੇ, ਕਾਫੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਲੱਗਾ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹਲੇ ਮਿਲੀ ਨਹੀਂ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਆ, ਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਨੋਟਸ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ, ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਪੂਰਾ ਗ੍ਰਾਸਪ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਰਿਕਾਰਡਿੰਗ ਜਲਦੀ ਅਵੇਲੇਬਲ ਹੋ ਜਾਏ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਤੇ, ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਇੱਕ ਠੀਕ ਆ, ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਹਰ ਗੱਲ ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਹੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲ ਕਸਰਤ ਨਾ ਬਣ ਕੇ ਰਹਿ ਜਾਏ। ਜਦੋਂ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਭੈਣ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਤੇ, ਲਵ ਤੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਕੰਪੋਨੈਂਟਸ ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ, ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟੀਕਲ ਅਸਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਆ ਪੂਰਾ ਮਹੀਨਾ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ। ਸੋ ਇਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟੀਕਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਪਲੀਮੈਂਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਦੀ, ਉਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਇਹਦਾ ਪਾਰਟ ਰਹੇ। ਉਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਇਸ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਲੱਖਣ ਬਣਾਏਗਾ ਬਾਕੀਆਂ ਨਾਲੋਂ। ਇੱਕ ਮੈਂ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੂੰਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫੀਮੇਲ ਪਾਰਟੀਸਪੈਂਟਸ, ਅੱਜ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਾ, ਪੁਨੀਤ ਜੀ ਵੀ ਬੋਲੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਆ ਤਾਨੀਆ ਜੀ ਬੋਲੇ, ਵਿਮਨ ਦਾ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਸਮਝਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਬੋਲਣ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗਾ, ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਟਲੀਸਟ ਵਿਮਨ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਤੋਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਕੀ ਐਕਚੁਅਲ 'ਚ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਹਨ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੈਲਪਫੁਲ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਰਹੂਗਾ। ਤੇ ਸੋ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਅੱਜ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਆ, ਇਟਸ ਵੈਰੀ, ਇੱਕ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਦਾ ਇੰਸੀਡੈਂਟ ਵੀ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਬਲਦੇਵ ਭਾਜੀ ਨੇ, ਅਸੀਂ ਪਰਸਨਲੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ, ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਫਿਊਨਰਲ ਹਾਊਸ ਰਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਬੜਾ ਵੋਲੰਟੀਅਰ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਬੜਾ ਕੁਛ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ। ਪਰ ਇਹ ਬੜਾ ਸ਼ੌਕਿੰਗ ਸੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਲਈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਬੰਦਾ ਯਾਰ ਇਹ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ। ਇਹ ਬੰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਇਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਕਿਸੇ ਦਾ ਫਿਊਨਰਲ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨਾ, ਉਹ ਫਿਊਨਰਲ ਹਾਊਸ ਰਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਲਵੇਜ਼ ਹਸਬੈਂਡ ਵਾਈਫ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ। ਸੋ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਵਾਇਲੈਂਸ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਦਿਖ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਮੈਰਿਜਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਠੀਕ ਠਾਕ ਸਮਝ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਪਰਦੇ 'ਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਛ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਮ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ। ਉਹਦੀ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ। ਕਿੰਨੇ ਕੁ ਬੰਦੇ ਵੈਬਨਾਰਸ 'ਚ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਪਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੈਠੀਏ, ਆਪਾਂ ਲੋਟਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਾਂ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰੀਏ। ਇਹ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਸਾਡਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। ਬਾਕੀ ਭੈਣ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰੀਏ, ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਹਾਊ ਯੂ ਈਟ ਐਨ ਐਲੀਫੈਂਟ ਵਨ ਬਾਈਟ ਐਟ ਅ ਟਾਈਮ। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲ ਕੈਪੈਸਿਟੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲ ਫਰੰਟ ਤੋਂ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰਨ। ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਕੋਈ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਆ, ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਦੇਣ। ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਵਰਗੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਆ, ਸਧਾਰਨ ਬੰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਐਟਲੀਸਟ ਆਪਣੀ ਘਰ ਦੀ ਚਾਰ ਦੀਵਾਰੀ 'ਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਲਾਹਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। ਲਾਈਕ ਮੇਰੇ ਬੱਚੇ, ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਉੱਠਦਾ 1 ਘੰਟਾ, ਮੇਰੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਮੰਮੀ ਸੁੱਤੀ ਹੋਆ ਤੇ ਡੈਡੀ ਕਿਚਨ 'ਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਸਵੇਰੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਚਾਹ ਬਣਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਇੱਕ ਸਪੇਸ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਨਾਰਮਲ ਆ। ਜੇ ਇਹ ਨਾਰਮਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗੂਗਾ, ਜੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਮੈਂਟੈਲਿਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਪੜੂਗੇ, ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੱਦ ਤੱਕ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਡੈਂਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ, ਰਾਈਟ। ਜਦੋਂ ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਕੇ ਬੁਲਾਉਂਦੀ, ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਕੇ ਬੁਲਾਵਾਂ। ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਧਿਆਨ ਨਾਲ ਸੁਣਦੀ, ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਧਿਆਨ ਨਾਲ ਸੁਣਦਾ। ਮੇਰੇ 2 ਮੇਲ ਚਾਈਲਡ ਆ, ਇੱਥੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ 2-2 ਬੱਚੇ ਹੋਣੇ ਆ। ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ 2-2 ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਲੈ ਲਈਏ ਤੇ ਡਾਊਨ ਦਾ ਰੋਡ ਇਨ 50 years ਓਲੰਪਿਕ ਟੀਮ ਜੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਬਣਦੀ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਨਿਆਣਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ। ਲਾਈਕ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਦਰ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝਾ ਸਕਦਾ, ਥੱਕ ਗਿਆ ਸਮਝਾ ਕੇ, ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝਦੇ, ਰਾਈਟ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਸਨਲ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਵੀ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਕਰਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਨਾ ਕਰਾਂ, ਪਰ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਕੋਵਿਡ ਡਾਇਗਨੋਜ਼ ਹੋਇਆ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕੋਵਿਡ ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪੋਜ਼ ਹੋ ਗਈ, ਕੋਵਿਡ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਤੇ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ 15 ਡੇਜ਼ ਲਈ ਆਈਸੋਲੇਟ ਕਰਤਾ। ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ 2 ਚੋਇਸਿਸ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ, ਜਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਬ੍ਰਦਰ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਇੱਥੇ, ਉਹ ਰੋਟੀ ਪਾਣੀ ਭੇਜ ਦਿੰਦੇ, ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ। ਉਹ 15 ਡੇਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਕਮਰੇ 'ਚ ਆਈਸੋਲੇਟ ਰਹੀ। ਮੈਂ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਘਰ ਦਾ। ਯਕੀਨ ਕਰੋ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਦੀ ਘਰ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਨਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਮੈਂ ਆਲਵੇਜ਼ ਆਪਣੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਨੂੰ ਹੈਲਪ ਕਰਦਾ। ਪਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਯਕੀਨ ਕਰੋ ਮੈਂ 6 ਵਜੇ ਉੱਠਦਾ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਰਾਤ ਦੇ 10 ਵੱਜ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀ। ਮੈਂ ਸਿਰਫ 4 ਘੰਟੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਘਟਾ ਲਿਆ ਮੈਂ। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰ 21 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿਆਹ 'ਚ ਫੀਲ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਹਾਊ ਮਚ women work। ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਸੈਮੀਨਾਰ 'ਚੋਂ ਸੁਣ ਲਈ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਰੀਅਲਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਐਟਲੀਸਟ ਇਨ 21 years of my marriage ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਦੀ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ, ਓਨੈਸਟਲੀ। ਐਂਡ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਸੈਡ ਪਾਰਟ ਇਹ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਕੰਮ ਤੋਂ ਕਵਰ ਆਲ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਫਟਾਫਟ ਮੂੰਹ ਹੱਥ ਧੋ ਕੇ ਲੰਚ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਲੱਗਦਾ, ਸ਼ੀ ਵਾਜ਼ ਫੀਲਿੰਗ ਗਿਲਟੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕੰਮ ਬਹੁਤ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਐਂਡ ਆਈ ਫੈਲਟ ਬੈਡ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਗਿਲਟੀ ਫੀਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਲਈ, ਰਾਈਟ? ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਅਹਿਸਾਸ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਇਹ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕੰਮ ਆ। ਸੋ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਬੰਦੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਆਈ ਵਿਲ tell them ਕਿ ਐਟਲੀਸਟ 3 ਦਿਨ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਐਕਸਪੈਰੀਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੇਖੋ। if you are sincere, do it. ask your wife to sit and then you cook, you do laundry, you do cleaning. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੋ, ਕੰਮ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਜਾਓ ਤੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਆ ਕੇ ਦੇਖੋ ਕਿ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਮੈਨੇਜ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ 2 ਦਿਨ ਰਾਤ 9 ਵਜੇ ਡਿਨਰ ਸਰਵ ਹੋਇਆ। ਆਪਾਂ ਆਮ ਹੀ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਤੂੰ ਖਾਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਹਾਲੇ, ਤੇ ਮੈਂ 4 ਘੰਟੇ ਸਿਰਫ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਦਿਨ 'ਚ। and for so many years she work 8 hours। ਸਾਡਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਵੱਡਾ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਆ ਕੇ ਕਰਦੀ ਸੀ। ਲਾਈਕ ਇਟ ਜਸਟ ਦਿਸ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਟੋਟਲੀ ਚੇਂਜਡ ਮਾਈ ਥਿੰਕਿੰਗ ਫॉर ਲਾਈਫ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰਦੀ ਸੀ ਇਹ। ਸੋ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਇਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਦੇਖੀਏ। ਆਈ ਐਮ ਰੀਅਲੀ ਸੌਰੀ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹਿਣੀ ਆਈ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਈ, ਬਟ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਆ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟੀਕਲ ਐਪਲੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਅਸੀਂ ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੀਏ। ਬਾਕੀ ਹੁਣ ਟਾਈਮ ਥੋੜਾ ਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਆਪਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਹੋਪਫੁਲੀ। ਪਰ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਲਦੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ, ਮਹੀਨੇ 'ਚ 1 ਵਾਰ ਘੱਟਿਆ, ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਾਈਡ ਕਰੋ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਬਲਦੇਵ ਭਾਜੀ, ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਭੈਣ ਜੀ, ਪੁਨੀਤ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੋਵੋ। ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਸਪੀਕਰ ਆਈ ਰੀਅਲੀ ਲਾਈਕ ਆਈ ਐਮ ਰੀਅਲੀ ਥੈਂਕਫੁਲ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਲਿਆਂਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਮ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਆਮ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਦਾ ਪਾਰਟ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ।
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਹਰਜੀਤ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਪਣੇ ਦੱਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਸੇਧ ਦੇ ਚੱਲੇ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟੀਕਲ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ। ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਕੰਪੇਨ ਨੂੰ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਤੱਕ ਨਾ ਰੱਖੀਏ, ਅੱਗੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੀਏ। 2-3 ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਕਹੇ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਹੋਪਫੁਲੀ ਨੈਕਸਟ 15 ਡੇਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਸ਼ੇਪ ਅਪ ਕਰਕੇ ਡੈਫੀਨੇਟਲੀ ਵੀ ਵਿਲ ਡੂ ਸਮਥਿੰਗ। ਐਂਡ ਇਹ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਿਪੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ, ਨਾਟ ਓਨਲੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ PCHS, ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੋਈ ਐਫਰਟ ਨਹੀਂ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਲੇਸ ਤੇ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕਰੋ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਸਟਰੋਂਗ ਥਾਟ ਹੈ। ਐਂਡ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਕੰਮ ਲਾਤਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਮੇਲ ਆ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਹਫ਼ਤਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੋ ਸਾਰੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ 'ਚ, ਜੇ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ 'ਚ ਆਉਣਾ ਤਾਂ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ।
ਵਰਿੰਦਰ, ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਜੇ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ 'ਚ ਆਉਣਾ। What I'm trying to say ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ 1 ਵੀਕ ਦਾ ਪਾਇਲਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੇਖੋ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਡ ਆ, ਹਰਿੰਦਰ ਕੋਲ ਰਜਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਾਓ ਐਂਡ ਦੈਨ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਬੈਕ ਐਟ ਦ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ।
I will start, ਚਾਹੇ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੀ ਕਰਾਂ, ਬਟ ਹਰਜੀਤ ਜੀ
ਆਹੋ ਮਨਜੀਤ ਨੇ ਓਕੇ ਕਰਤਾ,
ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੀ ਸੀ ਭਾਜੀ, ਭੈਣ ਜੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਕਿ ਹਰਿੰਦਰ ਕੋਲ ਰਜਿਸਟਰ ਕਰਾਓ, ਤੇ ਹਰਿੰਦਰ ਕਿਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਰਜਿਸਟਰ ਕਰਾਉਣਗੇ?
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਬੈਕ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਮਨਜੀਤ?
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਜ਼ਰੂਰ।
ਗੁਲਵਿੰਦਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਲ ਸੀ ਕੋਈ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਪਹਿਲੀ ਤਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਤੇ ਹਰਜੀਤ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੋਹਣੇ ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੋਹਣੀਆਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ। ਜੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਮੇਲ ਇਸ ਤੇ ਇਫੈਕਟ ਕਰਨ ਤੇ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀ ਆਪੇ ਸੋਲਵ ਹੋ ਜਾਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਤੇ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਲੱਗ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਦੇਰ ਤੋਂ ਸੈਮੀਨਾਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਸਾਰੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ, ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਡੌਰੀ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਰੋਕਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੈਮੀਨਾਰ ਦੇ ਦੁਆਰਾ ਵੀ। ਬਟ ਜੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਯੰਗ ਜਨਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਲਿਆਂਦਾ ਜਾਵੇ, ਯੰਗ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ, ਯੰਗ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਆਉਣ, ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਦੈਟ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਿਆਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਜਲਦੀ ਸੌਰਟ ਹੋਊਗੀ। ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਬੱਚੇ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਰਫ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੇ ਥਾਟ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਬੇਟੀ ਆ ਮੇਰੇ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਕੰਮ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੇਟੇ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਬੇਟਾ ਇੱਕ ਬੇਟੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਦੇਣੀ ਇਹਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਵੀ ਰੱਬ ਨੇ 2 ਹੱਥ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਆ, ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਈ ਆ। ਜੇ ਮੰਮੀ ਇਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੂਡ ਬਣਾਇਆ, ਇਹ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ ਗਰਮ ਕਰਦੀ ਉਵੇਂ ਇਹ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਫਿਰ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਡੌਰੀ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੋਈ ਚੀਜ਼, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਵਿਆਹ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਪਲਾਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪੜਾਇਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਕੀ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ। ਜਿੰਨੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਈ ਕੀਤੀ ਉਨੀ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਦੇ ਮਾਂ-ਬਾਪ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਮਾਂ-ਬਾਪ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕੁੜੀ ਦੇ ਮਾਂ-ਬਾਪ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਬੇਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਦੇਣਾ ਤੇ ਵਾਏ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਕੁਝ ਮਿਲਦਾ। ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਐਦਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਲੜਕੀਆਂ ਯੰਗ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਇਹ ਸਵਾਲ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਆਉਣਗੇ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੱਦ ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਸੋਲਵ ਹੋ ਜਾਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ।
ਕੁਲਵਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, may I little add data to ਜੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਚ ਮੈਂ ਡੇਟਾ ਐਡ ਕਰ ਦਿਆਂ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਥੋੜੀ ਜੀ ਹੋਰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੋ ਜੂਗੀ and even people will step forward to register with Harinder. So this is data, United Nations ਦਾ data ਹੈ कि women's unpaid work of caregiving in a family is 10 to 39% of a country's GDP. This is more than transportation sector and manufacturing sectors, which are the biggest sectors in any economy. And as compared to men, women do 75% of unpaid and thankless jobs in the houses. So this needs to be reduced. This needs to be redivided. This needs to be rewarded. There has to be something around it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, please. Rana ji. Rana.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for this very important dialogue. मैं ये शेयर करना चाह रही थी कि मैं एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ काम करती हूँ, तो जिसमें हम लोग औरतों के लिए एक लीडरशिप कोर्स करते हैं 3 महीने का, एंड इट इज़ अ जनरल लीडरशिप कोर्स। और उसमें इस बार इत्तेफाक से देयर वर 3 साउथ एशियन women, और उनमें से one was going through a abusive relationship, and for years she had not had the courage to leave that relationship or tell her husband that she wanted out. लेकिन ये करते हुए उसको इतनी सपोर्ट मिली। तो मुझे ये लगता है कि हम यहाँ पे जो औरतें हम लोग हैं, हम लोग को इमोशनल सपोर्ट, हमारा अपना नेटवर्क नहीं होता है जो हमारा इंडिया से है। मैं इंडिया से हूँ, तो वहाँ पे हमारा वो नेटवर्क जो हम लोग बिल्डअप करते हैं यहाँ नहीं होता है, बिकॉज यहाँ पे जो नेटवर्क है वो जुड़ा हुआ है हस्बैंड्स के साथ। तो अगर हम किसी से ये शेयर भी करना चाहें कि भाई आई एम इन दिस रिलेशनशिप या हस्बैंड ऐसा करता है, तो वो बात पे खुल जाएगी। और हमारी सोसाइटी में ये है भाई कि बात खुलनी नहीं चाहिए। बट इन द सेफ्टी जो हम लोग ने प्रोवाइड की, हमारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने प्रोवाइड की, दीज वेमेन कुड शेयर। उसमें यू नो सम वर बैटलिंग एडिक्शंस, सम वर बैटलिंग होमलेसनेस, या सम वर सिंगल वेमेन, और कुछ थी जो अब्यूजिव रिलेशनशिप्स में थी। तो उनको इतनी सेफ स्पेस मिली। और दूसरा, जैसे कि टानिया ने जिक्र किया कि जो प्रैक्टिकल चीजें होती हैं कि अगर आपको घर छोड़ना है तो क्या क्या चीजें करनी है, यू हैव टू मेक अ प्लान। आपके पेपर वर्क कहाँ है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे वी आर डिपेंडेंट अपॉन पेपर वर्क, राइट। तो लीगल राइट्स क्या है औरतों के, अलग अलग रिलीजन में हाउ डज यू नो ईच रिलीजन कवर डिवोर्स और सेपरेशन, बच्चों की कस्टडी। सो प्रैक्टिकल आइटम्स लाइक दैट कि आप कहाँ पे आप एडवोकेसी, कहाँ कौन कौन आपकी मदद कर सकता है, कम्युनिटी में है, आपका एमपीपी आपके लिए क्या कर सकता है इस हालत में। सो यू नो together with that and other holistic information, और हम लोग ये शुरू करते हैं sharing our stories कि हमारा क्या बैकग्राउंड है, जितना जो कंफर्टेबल होता है शेयर करने के लिए। तो इस दौरान ये 3 महीनों में हम लोग ने देखा कि इतनी ज्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस औरतों में आई। और मैं इसका ये हवाला दे रही हूँ कि ये जो थी लेडी, शी फाउंड द करेज टू एक्चुअली टेक द डिसीजन and move forward with the plan कि भाई immediate आता है ना कि अगर husband नहीं support करेगा तो मैं क्या करूँगी. And for so many years she had not been working because she had been looking after the husband and children and the family. तो कि फिर मेरा क्या होगा. तो those things also we have to address कि सबसे बड़ा बिग घर क्या होगा, कहाँ रहूंगी, खाना कैसे खाएंगे, बच्चों को कौन देखेगा. खास तौर से अगर उन बच्चों में लड़कियां हैं, लड़कियों पे असर पड़ेगा, उनकी शादियां कहाँ होंगी. So we have to address these issues, and I think I agree with Hardeep that it cannot remain an intellectual exercise. Like we have to tackle it on the full basis of tackling patriarchy. जैसे कि उन्होंने कहा कि भाई औरतें कितना काम करती हैं, एहसास नहीं हुआ, रोल मॉडल्स बने. और दूसरा ये कि इस सिचुएशन में जो औरतें हैं उनको हम कैसे मदद कर सकते हैं. तो आई थिंक जैसे कोमल और कई लोगों ने चैट में भी कहा है कि एक पीयर ग्रुप वुमेन का हो जो अपने को सेफ महसूस करें, एंड देन वी कैन डिस्कस एंड गिव देम हेल्प थ्रू वेरियस एजेंसीज. मतलब रिसोर्सेज हैं हमारे पास, लेकिन कई औरतों को उनके बारे में पता तक नहीं होता है. तो थैंक यू.
Rana ji, if you won't mind, can you share your contact information to chat?
Sure, I'll put it in the. Do you want my organization's name?
Yes.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Yes, Seema.
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਹਰਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ. ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚੇਂਜ ਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ 'ਚ ਗੱਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਦੋ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ. ਇੱਕ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ ਰੋਂਗ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ 'ਚ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਜਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਗਨੈਂਸੀ ਐਂਡ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਚਾਈਲਡ ਬਰਥ ਆਊਟ ਆਫ ਵੈਡਲੌਕ, ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਈਲਾਈਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਕੰਪਲਸਰੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਇੱਕ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਪ੍ਰਪੇਅਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੇਂ ਮੁਲਕ 'ਚ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਫਰੀडम ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਐਂਡ ਆਪਣੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਈਲਾਈਟਸ ਦੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਸ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ. ਨੰਬਰ 1. ਨੰਬਰ 2 ਕਿ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ, ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਮਰਦਾਂ ਲਈ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਲਈ, ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ 7 ਫੇਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਜਾਂ 4 ਲਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਿਮਿਲਰ ਕਿਉਂ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ, ਕੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ.
Yes, Seema ji, this is a bigger project, a bigger thought. So this is something, yes, education piece we can do, because social responsibility as a social organization, as a citizen, we can do. But sometimes जिथे किते उन्हां दी आस्था जुड़ी हुई है, so we can educate. This is education the piece, as Rana ji ने कहा है कि ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਥਾਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਨੂੰ, ਐਂਡ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਵੈਰੀ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੈਟਰੀਆਰਕਲ ਸੈਟਅਪ ਹੈ, ਇਟਸ ਆਫਨ ਇਨ ਅ ਮਚ ਹਾਇਰ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ, ਐਂਡ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਥਾਊਜ਼ੈਂਡ ਈਅਰ ਤੋਂ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਪਾਵਰ ਹੈ. ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਚੈਲੰਜ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਯੈਸ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਟੂ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਫਰਮ ਆਵਰ ਓਨ. ਹਰਜੀਤ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਬੜੀ ਸਿੰਪਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਅਗਲੀ ਜਨਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਓ ਕਿ ਕਰਨਾ ਕੀ ਹੈ, ਮਾਈਂਡ ਸੈਟ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ. ਯਾ ਤਾਨੀਆ ਜੀ.
I think
Manjinder, you want to say? Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, Harinder ji, I just really quickly want to make one comment. The power of education. My mother-in-law, she has 2 sons. She doesn't have any daughter. And honestly, I can vouch for it that, all mother-in-laws need to learn something from her, because ਅਸੀਂ normally ਦੇਖਿਆ ਆਪਣੇ culture ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਆਫਿਸ ਤੋਂ and your mother-in-law will be surrendering the entire kitchen to you, that now it's your own platform. And I was having a 2-month-old daughter when I joined back my work, and when I used to come back, she used to tell me, okay, fine, you rest, after 2 hours I will provide you your daughter. So, and she used to tell my husband that if she is getting up at night, you also have to get up to feed the child in the same manner. So my husband was making all the, milk for my daughter, waking up me, staying awake all night. So I just want to, highlight the power of education here, that how she has taught her sons in a manner that you have to be equally responsible for anything and everything, whether it's nurturing your child, whether it is a part of any household activity. And she has acted as a role model for herself, that, where I will be lying down, I will be sleeping, and she'll be taking care of my child as well. So like the education or bringing those ideas right up front, they do bring a lot of change in the family. Like, charity begins at home, I would say, and so as learning also begins at home. So I would request all of the participants who are listening here to, start something of that sort at their own houses, probably educating their families, or providing supports to their daughter-in-laws, or like anything for that matter, which we can do at our own self. Thank you.
Before we give Harinder, before we give it to Tanya, I just wanted to hear from the second generation, from Komal and Amanjeet, because they were born in Canada. What do they think? What might be some of the solutions? Because they are young, they were born here, they went to school here, they work for PCS. I just wanted to get perspectives from Komal. Komal, if you're there, bete.
Yes, can you hear me, Uncle?
Thank
Thank you so much for giving me the space to talk. I truly do want to just piggyback off of the point that Manjinder made. I think a lot of it has to do with education. Yes, peer supporting and providing social support groups 100% for concerns that are happening at this time for the women that are experiencing violence. But a lot of it has to be preventative and educating. So having support groups or even groups for younger boys to understand and learn what it's like to be a proper, or what is, for example, there's actually a group that is happening outside right now where single moms have their sons join, and it's like a gentleman's club. Younger boys are learning at a younger generation what it's like to be appropriate, or what senses are okay, what's not okay, through having a role model or a male teach them those mannerisms, right? And I think that's so important. Educating our younger generation is so critical in that. And then having that role modeled in the home is great, because then it also, if we see our father figures or male figures in our lives doing that, as a female myself, it sets a certain standard for me on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So if I have my dad doing things like, for example, what Harjeet uncle or sir was saying, it makes it more of an understandable point that I understand, though, next time when I find a partner, these are things that I would expect from that partner. This needs to be role modeled within our homes, and men and younger boys need to be educated on this very much. So, but thank you for letting me talk.
Hi, Kamal. Amanjeet, and is Shivangi there? If you can also say a few words, Shivangi. Amanjeet, go ahead.
I couldn't have said it better than Komal. Like, that video even highlighted it. Some of that learned behavior, and we have to be more mindful, especially with younger kids and stuff. They pick up things, they're sponges, they'll take things into whatever context they see it. And a lot of that transitions even into their social settings. What are your friends doing? Is it acceptable that your friends are treating women in a certain way? How often have we been put in spots where maybe our friends are making jokes that shouldn't be made, and are we sitting there complacent and allowing it to happen, or are we putting a stop to it? And I think that ties into that why good men are silent piece, is that there's a lot of times where we're afraid to, because we don't want to lose our friends, we're not going to call out their actions. And I think developing that skill to be able to call out individuals when they're doing something, that's important. As to touch on the social media part that Simo was talking about, on social media, it's a great platform, but it's also a place where you can easily get caught into engaging with people in meaningless conversations, because they're there to get a rise out of you. So it's navigating those waters. If you're able to support a certain cause that's going on, you should be able to support all the other causes that are taking place as well. So it's just a matter of using that platform effectively and not giving a space to those individuals that are looking to further their negative thoughts by engaging them in a dialogue that's not going to go anywhere either. But again, like, a lot of it is just coming down to how your circle is, and and what your role models are like that you're growing up with.
Awesome. I don't know whether Shivangi is there here or whether she has just left. That's fine. Tanya ji, go ahead.
Just very quickly, I just have this, as I heard Manjinder talking about her mother-in-law, it would be great to have her talk.
Yeah.
In a workshop or on a TV show or something like that, because there's some power in a mother-in-law talking about these things, just to provide a different perspective on things and why she, how and why she kind of changed her whole perspective. So that was one thought I had. And the other thing is actually a question I wanted to ask Seema, because from what I understood, I don't understand Punjabi completely, because I'm a Bengali, I speak Bengali, but I think what you were talking about were international student women who were becoming pregnant and then being pressured to do whatever, have abortions or whatever. And my question was, what are the reasons why they're having babies here? Are these out of like sexual assault or rapes? Or is there some kind of legal reason? Maybe I'm thinking, is it because they think that it might be easier for them to stay in Canada if they have a child here?
One of the reasons is this, the one you mentioned, that it's easier for the immigration process. And the other thing is that, because the girls are so young when they come to Canada, like right after their grade 12, I guess. And then they're too young to understand. And I think that the freedom they get, there's nobody, any family member or anybody else to kind of educate them or kind of take care of them or make them understand that what is right or wrong for them. And plus, because they're too young and they fall for false promises, I guess.
Okay.
But the immigration is one of the biggest reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Harinder ji, ਤੁਸੀਂ
Yes, any comments? So almost time is over. So ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ last minute comment or question, anything from this session, any suggestion?
Preet, go ahead.
I can say that, yeah, it starts from home. Again, from my experience, my husband never cooked before our marriage. Like all he knew was a tea bag tea and one single fry egg. But after marrying and during the pregnancy, he learned everything. I wasn't working, but for 9 months, he had been cooking. He would take recipe, cook, and he's a role model for, I think, anybody. And he just how do I say it? He's just so respectful, and he taught my kids that no matter what, you cannot talk to mother like this, no matter what, even when they were kids. So my kids, they know their limits, that they cannot talk in a raised voice with their mother because he stands right up there. And I think this is how it should be. Every man should actually stand up also. It's not only women's responsibility to get respect, it is men's responsibility also to give women respect and power. Like, we are married for 24 years and 24 years, it's never happened that if I say, I don't feel like cooking, and he say, no, what shall I do then? No, he say, okay, you don't feel like cooking, I'll do it. Just as simple as that. No question asked. I'm sitting here since morning. I mean, he's doing everything. He'll even bring me a cup of tea. So it's kind of, I think it starts from home. And it's very important, like Harjeet ji said, that we have to have some kind of studies to give men to like work for 1 week or so for women, for their wives, or even for whatever their other significant partner, to work and make them go on vacation or whatever, even at home, just to realize how important it is to have women in their life. Thank you.
We have the survey.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's so nice to hear from, like, we have 2 women here who have said that husbands have been supporting. Otherwise, if a husband is not supportive, then on a lighter note, I think it is the social cost and the emotional cost of keeping such a man at home is too high. So I will not comment on that. So we have this survey link here. You can put your feedback or any suggestions or whatever through this link, and we'll try to work on that next time.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and participation and valuable thoughts. And I really liked suggestion by Harjeet. So ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਿੰਨ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, ਇੱਕ ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ, ਇੱਕ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ ਐਂਡ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਸਨਲ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਚਾਹੇ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇੰਟੈਲੈਕਚੁਅਲ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਿਪੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਸਟ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਟਰੈਕ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਪਰ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸਿਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਫਾਈਨਲੀ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲੀ ਆ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਅਲਾਈਨ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਸਾਡੀ ਹੋਰ ਸੁਜੈਸ਼ਨ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਪੈਂਟ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਐਟਲੀਸਟ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਆਪਣੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ 4 ਜਾਂ 5 ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਨਕਰੇਜ ਕਰੋ ਕਿ ਅਗਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ 15 ਦਿਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਜਿੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਪੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਉਨਾ ਹੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾਏਗੀ, ਉਨੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਸਟਰੈਂਥ ਵਧੇਗੀ। ਐਂਡ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਕੁਇਕ ਸਰਵੇ ਆ ਜੀ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਈ ਸੁਜੈਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੇ, ਕੋਈ ਐਨੀਥਿੰਗ ਯੂ ਵਾਂਟ ਟੂ ਐਡ, ਐਨੀ ਕਮੈਂਟ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਦੇ ਦਿਓ। ਇਟ ਵਿਲ ਟੇਕ ਓਨਲੀ 2 minutes, ਸੋ ਕੁਇਕਲੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਵੈਰੀ ਮਚ।